Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Migration of Mystery Warriors. The Avars are one of the most mysterious people in history. We know very little about them, other than that they were warriors who rode horses and dominated a large patch of land between Vienna and Belgrade in Europe. We also know that for 200 years, they were a scourge on the Roman Empire. And then, as suddenly as they appeared, they were gone. For centuries, scholars have been looking for evidence of who the Avars were. That evidence has been scant until now, when a team of researchers looked at ancient burial mounds that belonged to elite members of the Avars. By doing DNA tests, researchers have learned the Avars were genetically identical to Mongolians. What this means is that a group of Mongols, long before Genghis Khan tried to conquer the world, snuck out of Mongolia. They moved into Europe, set up base in modern Hungary, and then built an empire that would last 2 centuries before they were wiped out. The mystery is trying to figure out why this all happened. There are accounts from the 6th century in China about a horse-riding group of nomads called the Ruran attacking their northern borders. When rival nomads showed up in the year 552 AD, the Ruran vanished. 15 years after that, the Eastern Roman Empire reported the arrival of a new group from the east. They called themselves the Avars, but nobody knew where they came from. It looked like they were the descendants of the Ruran, or whatever was left of the people after they were defeated in Asia. While the new DNA evidence has managed to solve this piece of the puzzle, we still don't know what happened to the Avars. They were eventually beaten by the Emperor Charlemagne, and after that, there was no sign of them. Number 9. The Fate of Owain Glyndwr. 600 years after the death of Owain Glyndwr, historians are still trying to figure out how he died. He's arguably one of the most important figures in Welsh history, yet nobody knows the true details surrounding his final years, nor where he was buried. Owain was proclaimed the Prince of Wales in the year 1400. He led a successful campaign against the English, captured a few castles, and was widely celebrated as a great ruler. But his rule only lasted just over a decade. The last sighting of him was in 1412, when he participated in an ambush. The Welsh prince captured and ransomed some of King Henry V's men, then vanished off the face of the earth. There are absolutely no records of what happened to Owain. We know King Henry had a huge bounty on his head, but he was supposedly never betrayed by any of his comrades. His death was recorded in 1415, but no specific details were given. One historian wrote, "He was buried in the darkness of night," with his name surviving in folklore along with other famous names like King Arthur. Number 8. The Lost Book of Enventio Fortunata. The Enventio Fortunata is a book that may or may not have existed in the 14th century. Historical records talk about the book, and its influence was felt in the Western world for centuries. This is all despite not a single copy or extract from it ever being discovered. It was allegedly written in the 14th century and said to contain a description of the North Pole. The North Pole was described in the book as a magnetic island, which is somewhat true, surrounded by a massive whirlpool and 4 large continents. It's believed the book was written as a kind of travelogue by a Franciscan friar from Oxford who made a journey to the North Atlantic in the 1360s. He was the only one who journeyed anywhere close to the North Pole, and he wrote down all his observations in a single book. That book, the Enventio Fortunata, was presented to King Edward III of England. Then, in the 1490s, when Atlantic explorers wanted more information on the mysterious northern regions of the Atlantic, the book mysteriously vanished. We still don't know who the author of the book really was, just how far north he had traveled by boat, or if he had really written a book detailing all his exploits. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 7. The Dance of San Vito. The story of the Dance of San Vito is not one for the faint of heart. According to the legend, Saint Vitus was only 7 years old when he died a martyr in the year 303. The young boy was a devout Christian in the days when the Roman governors were still persecuting Christians. He was said to perform healing miracles, and so the Romans believed him to be a sorcerer. The child martyr and his wet nurse, along with his tutor, were all killed in the name of religion. The saint, even though just a child, was put in a pot of boiling oil. But the story goes that instead of dying immediately, the child rolled up his sleeves and began to dance. He danced with such gusto that the entire imperial court started dancing as well, and soon the whole place erupted into a dance party. The child did die in the end, and if you ask historians today, they don't think he was actually dancing. They believe the pain was so horrible that it caused the boy to have violent convulsions that looked like uncontrollable dance moves. And to be honest, this is a lot more likely. Whatever the case, Saint Vitus would go on to become the patron saint of dancers and actors, as well as epileptics. Number 6. Where is Christopher Columbus? Spanish researchers recently solved a mystery going back centuries. A forensic team of scientists led by the Spanish geneticist José Antonio Lorente looked at bone fragments taken from the Cathedral of Seville, then compared their DNA to the remains of Christopher Columbus's brother Diego. The Spanish researchers say it's a 100% match. What this means is that 500 years after Christopher Columbus died in the Spanish city of Valladolid, we finally know the location he's buried. What this means is that 500 years after Christopher Columbus died in the Spanish city of Valladolid, we finally know where he is buried. At least we know one of his burial places. There's been debate for centuries as to where exactly all Christopher Columbus's bones were put after his death. Some of his remains are definitely in Spain, but perhaps not all of them. The Dominican Republic claims they have his bones stashed in a lighthouse monument in the capital of Santo Domingo. However, the Dominican Republic refuses to hand the bones over for analysis. The issue with Columbus's bones started after his death on May 20, 1506. He wanted to be buried in the Americas, but that didn't happen. We know that 3 years after he died, his remains were moved to a monastery in Sevilla. Then, in 1537, his bones were sent to Santo Domingo to be buried, and they were laid to rest there until 1795, when Spain took them back. The bones of Christopher Columbus were shipped to Havana, then back to Spain in 1898. At least that's what was supposed to have happened. The truth is that through all that moving around, things got a little messy. Some of his remains ended up in Spain, but there are still bones missing, and nobody really knows where all his remains actually are. Number 5. The Green Children. The story of the Green Children of Woolpit is a historical mystery from the 12th century. It was during the reign of King Stephen, a time in England's history known to historians as the Anarchy, that the ancient village of Woolpit went through some strange times. A group of villagers that went to the edge of town to check on their wolf trap came across 2 young children with green skin. These children were speaking a nonsense language and acting strangely. The kids were taken into the town and offered something to eat, but they refused. They were then given a room to sleep at Sir Richard de Calne's house, a man of local nobility. The story is a bit vague from here. It's believed the 2 green children lived with Richard for several years. He managed to teach them how to eat proper human food. They gradually learned English, and their skin eventually became a normal color. When they could finally communicate enough to answer questions, Richard asked them where they had come from. They replied that they had come from a land called St. Martin, and that they didn't remember how they had gotten to England. It's one of the weirder mysteries from the 12th century. Historians today believe the kids were probably descendants from Flemish immigrants who had been displaced during war. They ended up in England but could only speak Flemish, which the villagers just assumed was gibberish. Their green skin could be explained by malnourishment, something called green sickness. But the truth of these strange green children will remain a mystery. Number 4. The theft of the Irish crown jewels. In 1783, an elite aristocratic order was founded in Ireland called the Order of St. Patrick. In 1831, the Grand Master of the order received a gift of incredible jewels. These jewels became known as the Irish crown jewels, or the State Jewels of Ireland. The jewels were fashioned from 394 precious stones, donated to the order by the King of England himself, William IV. In 1907, the jewels went missing. It became the most notorious heist in Irish history, and the jewels still haven't been found to this day. At the time of the theft, the leader of the Order of St. Patrick was Joseph Gordon Campbell, the Earl of Aberdeen. The jewels were stashed in Bedford Tower and Dublin Castle. They were guarded by staff day and night, with a 24-hour outdoor patrol of real soldiers and policemen. Yet somebody, somehow, slipped past the guards, got into a safe room installed in the bowels of the castle, then made off with some of the most valuable jewels in history. The mystery remains unsolved, and the very last knight of the Order of St. Patrick passed away in 1974, taking the secrets of the order with him. Where do you think the jewels are hiding now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 3. The bodies of the Royal Anne Galley. The Royal Anne Galley sank off the coast of Lizard Point on November 10, 1721. It was a British warship with 200 people on board, fighting against pirates during the height of the golden age of piracy. It wasn't the sinking that was mysterious, though. The ship hit some rocks and sank, and that was all there was to it. The mystery is that nobody knows what happened to the people on board. The ship was filled with very wealthy passengers. One of them was John, 3rd Lord of Belhaven, an extremely important person in Scotland. Historians generally believed that after the ship was wrecked and the bodies washed up on the shore, they were buried in a nearby valley at a place called Pistol Meadow. But when an excavation in 2017 dug up the area, no human remains were discovered. This is all quite strange because the bodies almost certainly washed up on the beach. Stories of waterlogged corpses have been passed down from generation to generation, and everyone has agreed they were buried at Pistol Meadow. But since there are clearly no bodies at this location, we have to assume something else happened to the people. The question is, who took their remains and what did they do with them? Number 2. Medieval priest grave. The skeletal remains of a medieval priest who died 700 years ago have provided archaeologists with an intriguing mystery. The remains were discovered at Thornton Abbey in Lincolnshire by experts with the University of Sheffield. He was found buried on the grounds of the abbey, which was originally a monastery built in 1139. What started as a tiny monastery grew into one of the grandest and richest religious houses in all of Britain. A gravestone was found close to the priest's remains with the name Richard de Wipperton written on it. It marks his death as April 17, 1317. This huge stone slab also has an extract from the Bible, as well as a rough drawing of what could be the priest himself or some other saint. After the researchers took the skeleton back to their laboratory, they did some tests. They found he was a fairly short man, standing only 5 foot 4 inches tall, and that he died around the age of 35. What archaeologists don't know is what killed him. They discovered a depression on the back of his skull from a massive blow, but that depression had healed several years before his death. Other than that single episode of violence, archaeologists found no evidence of anything physically wrong with him. So, what killed the priest? He may have actually been the victim of the Great Famine between 1315 and 1317. The famine was triggered after devastating rain fell throughout the entire spring and summer, depleting all the crops in Europe. If a priest at such an important place as Thornton Abbey could die of hunger, then anyone could. Number 1. Who wrote the Bible? One of the biggest mysteries in Christianity is who actually wrote the Bible. Scholars have been looking at the issue for centuries and have never come to a conclusion. It's been around for 2,000 years, and we're finally getting closer to figuring out who the author was. The Old Testament, also known as the Hebrew Bible, may have been written either by a single author or by multiple authors. This is one of the biggest challenges when trying to figure out who wrote the book. One theory claims that Joshua, leader of the Israelites, sat down and wrote out every last story in the Old Testament. The other theory is that the Bible was actually written by many different people throughout a long stretch of time, likely groups of priests. Then comes another mystery. Who wrote the Gospels? The New Testament, which chronicles the story of Jesus' life, was also written by an unknown person or persons. It comprises 4 chronicles named after Jesus' most devout disciples, but nobody knows who wrote them. The best theory historians have is that at least 13 out of the 27 books of the New Testament were written by Paul the Apostle himself, after he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. This would mean that Jesus was a real person and that the Gospels really were written by friends who had known him. Thanks for watching! Do you have any theories involving any of these shocking historical mysteries I just told you about? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!